Hi, thanks for coming here today. I've been in New Hampshire for 5 years, but I'm actually originally from New York, just north of the city. So I was definitely, personally impacted by 9/11, and I definitely believe that if we knew that there was a threat coming towards our nation, we would take action to prevent that threat. And right now, scientists are saying the greatest threat to our nation is global warming, and the energy crisis that we're in right now, and we have to commit to some mandatory reductions in greenhouse gases. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to commit to taking a lead on this issue and reducing our greenhouse gases and preventing another tragedy that might be happening in New York with the sea levels.
I think that global warming is a major issue for us to face. If you look at the things that threaten the loss of life in the world, I would say this young lady asked me about one that is probably the most dominant, which is HIV/AIDS. Malaria is another one that is dominant. And I think global warming is also very, very important. But to start comparing these and say this is more important than that, or something else is more, these are all very important. And the threat of terrorism. The threat of terrorism is right there. And since September 11, there have been 23 attempts, at least, that are public, that I have been able to count at least, of Islamic terrorists who tried to kill us. So when you start trying to grade these threats to the American people, you've got to take them all into account. Now, so what do you do about global warming? The best thing to do about global warming is exactly what you said, energy independence. And the president should lead an effort to create energy independence. And energy independence helps you in both ways. It helps you with global warming, and it helps you with terrorism as well. And it helps our economy. And it helps our participation in the global economy because it gives us something to sell. So it's something we just have to do. And we have to do it at the level at which we put a man on the moon, or the Manhattan Project, or we have to support all the alternative technologies. It doesn't do much good to try to do this from mandates and penalties. Because mandates and penalties, first of all, don't work real well. And secondly, mandates and penalties don't work real well when the technology is not available to work your way out of the mandate and the penalty. See, it's like the Kyoto Treaty had all these standards. But then you go to a country like India or China, and you tell them to meet these standards, but they don't have the technology to do it. So it's a no-win proposition. You can't. So the main thing is we got to develop these technologies. So I'll quickly list them. And then if you want to ask more questions about them, you can. The technologies are biofuels, the way Brazil has done, with its more per capita use of ethanol and biofuels than in America. We could use biofuels in a bigger way than we do. There's nuclear power. We haven't licensed a nuclear power plant in 30 years. France is 80% nuclear. We're 20. We're going down to 15. China's building 40 nuclear power plants. We're going to have to look at nuclear power. There are people that have frightened people about nuclear power. There are risks in nuclear power, no question about it. And we've got to deal with those risks. But we've done a pretty good job of it in this country. We haven't lost anyone in nuclear power. And every method of power, basically, that I'm talking about carries risk attached to it. The next one is we have to have clean coal, carbon sequestration. We have more coal reserves in the United States than they have oil reserves in Saudi Arabia. We should be using our coal reserves more. But again, coal also has risk. We see it with the tragedies that happen in coal mines. We have to build more refineries so that we can take advantage of oil in the United States or in ANWR, Canada, Mexico. We need to have hybrid vehicles. We should turn much more toward hybrid vehicles. Now, that's real important because most of the methods that I talked to you about really are very effective in producing home heating, home air conditioning, electricity, but they're not effective in producing fuel for transportation. But the more and more of our transportation needs that we can lay off on electricity, the more we reduce our need even for any kind of gasoline, which is going to help in a big way. And hybrid vehicles are there. They're usable. We can expand them. We can expand them more. Who knows? We might get to a day where we can expand them really dramatically, and we'd have much less reliance on gasoline. And then, of course, hydropower and wind and solar make up about 7-8% of our sources now for electricity. We probably should get that to 14-15%. I'm trying to think of what I missed. Natural gas, liquid natural gas, much less of an impact on the environment. Again, a much more diverse way available. And then conservation, and doing more about conservation. All of this has to be done as part of a whole, because no one of the things that I just mentioned, or maybe the one or two that I left out, no one of them is going to answer. It's not as if there's a silver bullet answer to this. I just can't say nuclear power, or carbon sequestration, or conservation, or hybrid vehicles, but all of these, you see, play a part. And if you increase each one of these, and you increase them 10%, 20%, 30%, all of a sudden, you're independent. All of a sudden, you don't have to rely on Saudi Arabia, or Iran, or Venezuela. When things are friendly, and things are good, and there's no extraction of a penalty for it, you can rely on it. But you don't have to do it if you had more energy independence. And almost all of these, not all of these, would significantly reduce our contribution to global warming. And most importantly, it would give us something we could give to and sell to those countries that will make a much bigger contribution to global warming than we can ever make. See, we could solve our contribution to global warming 100%, and it wouldn't make a darn bit of difference if China and India don't solve theirs. Remember, it's the same atmosphere. It doesn't matter if the polluting elements come from North America or they come from Asia. If they come from any one of those places in sufficient quantity, well, then we're going to have the same problem we have today. And a lot of the people who talk about global warming, they've got so many political agendas attached to it. They exclude so many possibilities as the answer. Maybe they exclude nuclear power, or they exclude something else. They're never going to get to an answer. Just by mandating, without having the technologies, China and India are just not going to go along with it.
Hey.